It is Friday, and we are just finished week 13, so we have week 14 and 15 left. First of all, this coming Friday, we're going to wire some of the room, PC-229. We're going to run some wire within the room, actually do a punch down on some jacks and pull the wire through conduit and actually do a real wiring situation right in the classroom. So we'll talk about topics of what needs to be done, what you have to be careful for, and we'll actually do the wiring and give people an opportunity to do that work. So that's Tech Den on Friday. We'll start at 9 a.m. This Friday, that we just finished up, BCA, Introduction to Computers and Information Systems, and we're emphasizing information systems the last 3 weeks. So we're going to start off the class. We'll talk about decision making, then we'll talk about how systems are developed, a couple database topics, we'll talk about Project 5, and then work in our groups. Okay. Actually, the first thing we did was we talked a little bit about the previous project, and I had a couple comments concerning that. You know, you can capture, if you have a screen, your screen on your monitor, and then you have a window in there with some information. You can capture just the window. Some people are still capturing the entire screen to put into their work, and then it's hard to read the specifics in the window. You can capture just the window. The next thing, I asked, where is this being hosted? And it's actually being hosted on AWS, Amazon. I know it says nyac.edu, but how you find that? Well, that's a domain name. You can do an NS lookup to get the IP address, and then you take the IP address, Aaron.net. Whoops, let me back up here. You can do that in Aaron.net, and then that will give you where it's being hosted. And if you do that, you'll find out it's being hosted by AWS. So we're actually paying somebody to manage our public website here at NIAC, which is not so unusual. We don't host it on our own servers. We'll talk a little more about that in a minute. We talked a little bit about editing a file, and I mentioned concerning the skills-based assessment, the last one. We did it in groups. If you want to redo it, if you think you can get a better score individually, you just let me know, and we can do that. We can arrange that. Decisions. All of us make decisions, and we're going to talk a lot about decisions the rest of the way out. Okay, so I mentioned, what decisions do technology handle well? Structured decisions, and we're going to talk a little bit about this each day next week too. So we talked about this, believe it or not, beginning of the year, right? We said we take data and then we use software to convert data into information. So we take the raw facts, something that may not mean a whole lot to us, and there is a lot of data nowadays. Just ask Facebook if they have a lot of data. And we take that data and we turn it into some type of information, something somebody can use. Okay, how do we manage data? Well, we store it in these data centers using a database management system, and that's currently what we're studying for a skill. Now, we're studying access as our database management system. Even though you probably wouldn't use Access directly very much in your life, but it's a good way to learn about databases. And the key thing nowadays, there's a lot of databases that are relational. This table relates to this table relates to this table. This is a more logical way to store data. And from those we can do queries and create information. Something that's valuable to us. Okay? And then we reviewed a couple key things here. Levels of management, we talked about the flattening of levels of management. Less middle managers, we got some people at the top, got a lot of first line, and then we have our workforce. Okay? So we talked a little bit about that. As technology moves, we use green here for information. As technology moves the right information to the right people, we actually need less people in a lot of situations. And that is the whole gamut. Everything from the workforce and all those middle managers. Okay? So over here, we talked about information, and I'll use blue now. As it moves up, we use a management information system to analyze the data and get the right information to the right people. Okay, so they can do their jobs, and their jobs can be making decisions or just doing their task. Alright, so here, this relates back to somewheres you can pay Amazon to hold your information. So we pay somebody to manage our nyac.edu. Not manage it, the better word is to host it. They take care of hosting it. So we don't have to worry about the security, we don't have to worry about the backup, etc., etc. Somebody else takes care of that, and then we pay them. Kind of like you pay for insurance to take care of stuff you couldn't afford to manage or you don't want to worry about. So then they, whoever hosts that, I could find out, I guess, they find a place to put it so it's accessible to the world. So they rent services from Amazon. And we looked at an example. I showed my Amazon account in class. Okay? Same idea. People could store stuff at Google, you know, at night, or whenever I plug my phone in, it backs up all my pictures, and they're kept here. And Google takes care of them. Okay? We talked about backup earlier. Now, one more thing to cover today. How do we develop our information systems? Two approaches that we're going to learn about in this class, and there's variations to these. Today we're going to talk about top-down, a systematic way to approach developing an information system. Next week we'll talk about, so to speak, bottom up. Now, both have merits, okay? So, depends on what you're doing or what kind of information system you're developing. They both have merits, okay? We have an information system in our house. It's a paper calendar. Okay, here's a calendar. So, we write stuff on that paper calendar. That's our information system, and it works great, okay? So, that's a broad view of just how you manage some information, how you keep track, okay? So we did the example in class. I said there's a problem. People write checks and then checks bounce. So companies don't like checks. People like writing checks because it gives them a day or two leeway to get the money in their account or whatever it might be. Okay, so we did a little survey, who writes checks, who doesn't anymore. A lot of people now manage their accounts with debit cards. But how did we get to debit cards? Well, somebody said there's a better way to manage this. So they created an information system that allows us to use a debit card instead of writing a check. That's an example. To do that, all these stages are extremely important. First one is you have some problem or challenge you want to take care of, so you analyze it. You have to understand the problem before you can solve it. Isn't that a novel idea? You have to understand the problem. And then there's all kinds of work done. And this little line over here, that's a loop back. So you analyze it, you talk about it, and you say, oh, nope, that's not going to work. You loop back and redo it, analyze it some more. You talk about rate on return. If we're going to do this, we're going to spend X amount of money. What are we going to get out of it? Now, sometimes people will do it and say, well, we have to get money back, or you might get value in your company. You might, whatever. There's some return on your efforts. Once you're pretty sure you know what you want to do, what the problem is, what do you want for a solution, how you're going to approach that, then is in design. Okay? And there's all kinds of things you can use in design. I used to go over all these different things. You can use flow charts to show, how you can do pseudocode and so forth. That stuff all comes from analysis. Then you get into how you're going to design it. Okay? You can create or you can buy. Okay? You can design in the direction of going to buy some software, or you can create your own. Key point, some people are confused. To create your own is way more expensive than buying. Way more expensive. Okay? Alright. The advantage of creating, huge advantage. Let me put some pluses here. You can develop something that fits your needs exactly. When you buy, it's hard to find that meets your needs. Much more difficult. And sometimes you end up paying for features you don't want. Okay? And then you can't adjust it to meet your needs. So creating has some huge advantages. A little more on that on Monday. Then, once you're pretty good and you know the design, then you develop it. And oh, by the way, design has this feedback loop, where you design and fix it, design and fix it. You're working with consultants, you're working with the people who run the company, you got the stakeholders, the people that are going to use the product and everything. So you get a lot of feedback before you actually start developing. Because once you start developing, then it's expensive to go back, and change things. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So development, you might be writing some code, you might be buying things, you're getting computers, you're getting a network set up, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you're buying services from Google or Amazon where you're going to put some of this information so the whole wide world can get at it, and you test it, and then eventually you have to implement it. You have to put it in. You can phase it in, maybe do one part, do a cutover, switch the whole thing at once. Usually that's the least expensive and most dangerous. Run a pilot. Like when all these stores switched over to scanning, scanning the products, like convenience stores. I think they're still called convenience stores. They go, you go to Yes Way, or you go to Hy-Vee, or you go to Come and Go, or Casey's, and all those. And they scan the product, okay? Some went to that, and then went back, and then went to it again. They found that customers, when they walked in, they didn't like seeing the price on the actual product. So it took us a few years to get over that. Can you believe that? So they had to switch back for a while, and then they switched back again, some of the convenience stores. Anyway, so you could run it in one store, a pilot, try it out, see how it works, get all the bugs out, get it working really good, and then put it in the rest of your stores. Phase in would be like you do one part of it, like you only do payroll first. That works okay. Then you do billing, okay, electronically. And if that works, then you do another one, okay. And then this last line here, from down here back up here, you evaluate. You see if it's working, and then you have maintenance, and you have updates. You know, you have to change the software a little bit. Most of you have suffered through Windows updating about when you didn't want it to. I don't know how they figure that out sometimes, but updates are crucial, you know, for security and so your software runs appropriately. Mostly, the most important part is security. Most updates have to do with something that's insecure in the software, and they fix it. They maybe don't tell you that, but that's pretty important. The evaluation, are you getting your return? Do the customers like it? Are you getting more customers, if that's your goal? Are your customers more satisfied? Are you more efficient? Are you saving money on the end of how you run your company? Are your employees more happy with how they do their jobs because of the new information system, etc., etc.? Another one, a lot of people skip this. They don't evaluate it. Then 5 years down the road, they find out it hasn't been working like they thought. Yeah, then it's kind of late to fix it. Well, that pretty much covers it. We will review this a little bit because our next step is to talk about bottom up. Instead of going through this big long process, we go through part of it and then we design a prototype and then build on the prototype. Okay? That works in a lot of cases when it comes to software. Not so many cases depending on what you're doing. Like, if we were building a house, you couldn't start building it until you're relatively sure what the design looked like. Does that make sense? You know? If you don't, well, you have to analyze. Like, you know, are you going to build 10,000 square feet? Well, wait a minute, no, couldn't afford that. So your rate of return or your money part of it wouldn't fit. So you figure out what you want, and then, of course, and when it comes to houses, do you build or do you buy? You have both of those options, just like software. So you get a design or get an idea of what you want, then if you can buy something reasonable, well, maybe you'll buy. But if you can't, well, then maybe you'll build, okay? And then, of course, before you start building, you got to get a lot, you got to get everything lined up, you got to have the blueprints pretty doggone close before you start. So you can see top-down design for building a house. But there are other projects that are bottom-up, like me building a tree house was bottom-up, and tune in Monday to get that story. That's it.